Do you ever hear or see an idea and just go,
What's wrong?
Nothing. It's nothing.
because it's so brilliant but so simple and you're angry that you weren't the one who thought of it? That was basically my exact reaction when I first saw the trailer for The Pedestrian. Using generic walking man / generic bathroom sign people as the protagonist of a puzzle game that takes place entirely inside of a bunch of signs doesn't sound like something anyone would think of, but at the same time it feels insane that it took this long for anyone to think of it. I somehow missed the initial release of this game even though I was interested in it, and then I saw it on sale on the PlayStation Store recently and I didn't even check the review scores, I didn't check how long to beat, I just bought it because I knew I was gonna love it. And in fact, I still haven't looked at review scores. Maybe I should do that now. An 83? A 7.7?
Are you kidding me? That is insultingly low?
To be fair, I've never fully understood how Metacritic works. You see a 7.7, you see there's 7 reviews, but then you scroll down and there's only 2, and if you click on a negative review, it just errors out. If someone understands Metacritic, please tell me, because I feel like it's specifically designed to frustrate me. An 83 is a really solid score. I think Ghost of Tsushima has the same thing, and that's a great game, but I still think it's too low for The Pedestrian because it's such a well-built experience with zero fat, tight mechanics, and puzzles that never get frustrating that by the time the credits rolled, I came to the conclusion that The Pedestrian is my favorite puzzle game of all time. Except for the Portal games, okay? I'm not a psychopath. I'll be totally honest with you guys. Puzzle games aren't exactly my #1 choice in games, but I do like them. I've played a good handful like this and Portal, obviously, The Witness, Thomas Was Alone, The Room, a bunch of puzzle platformers like Inside or Little Nightmares, point-and-click puzzle games like Darkside Detective, games with puzzles in them, games with bad puzzles in them. I've played Minesweeper, so I guess that counts. Look, I've probably played a lot more than that, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. The long and short of this is that I've played a sizable chunk of puzzle games, but I'm not exactly the spokesperson for puzzle games. I'm an action-adventure guy who likes to play a few puzzle games here and there, but that's also why I think it's important that I had such a huge connection to The Pedestrian. Straight-up puzzle games are usually ones that I'll enjoy, but I'll forget about pretty quickly. You typically gotta have some other big thing going on in the game to have my full attention, but this little game with zero talking and no gameplay aside from solving puzzles somehow had me hook, line, and sinker for every little stinker. I think a good place to start with this game is in its presentation, because it's the perfect blend of unique and familiar. I love when something takes a singular idea and tries to flesh it out as much as possible. I also love it when something tries to give you something new every 5 minutes and leaves you itching for more, but for short experiences, I think the well thought out, well realized main idea route is the way to go. Taking the super basic person design that you see on so many signs and taking that character through a labyrinth of signage and LCD displays is truly genius in my opinion, and being able to see streetcars and subways and everything in the background as you pop in and out of things hanging on the ceiling or onto streetlights or inside of elevators never got old. It's the same basic idea of something inanimate in real life actually having physical capabilities that you see in stuff like Toy Story, but this time it's about this dude that you've seen in countless places and how you might just be jumping around through all of this stuff that's interconnected like the people in the paintings of Hogwarts. It's just a fun setting, and having the little sheets pinned to like a bulletin board type of thing makes it feel super satisfying to shuffle them around and untangle the section for your little dude to move on to the next sign, while also connecting really great with some ideas introduced later on where you have to, say, connect wires together through these little sheets, and how certain corners or blockades don't let you place something in a place where you might want it. I don't know if I have any footage of this. I only took the first hour to keep the amount of puzzles I was showing limited to early stuff, but the presentation definitely went hand in hand with the gameplay while also standing out as pretty amazing just on its own. But as great as that is, it would be nothing if the actual puzzle elements of the game were not up to par, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of the actual gameplay of The Pedestrian. The overall idea of The Pedestrian's gameplay is that you need to go through doors and ladders to navigate through a series of small mazes. These sheets of paper have a bunch of platforms or jump pads or boxes or lasers or a whole bunch of other stuff in them, and you need to connect their doors and ladders together in order to avoid the hazards, activate certain objects, or bring key pieces to the next area in order to continue. And a big element is that once you connect two things and go through that connection, breaking that connection will reset everything back to the beginning. So you can't use this door to get here and then use that door to get up here. You gotta figure out how to get here without breaking this connection. The design of these puzzles is freaking incredible. You always need to think in order to make sure you're not accidentally making it impossible for you to reach certain areas or setting yourself up to get to a locked door without having a key or any number of other moving parts. But until the latter 25% of the game, no puzzle took me more than a couple of minutes to solve. They still felt challenging and like they were testing my abilities, but they weren't a brain-numbing experience where I had to jot down 100 trials on a piece of paper and rip my hair out after every one. That even includes the ones in the last stretch of the game that took longer to figure out. I had so much trust in the game and its design at that point that I knew that as long as I was thinking about the mechanics for a while, something would eventually click. And it's helpful that you're able to test out if certain new mechanics work how you expect them to or not, and your only punishment for doing that is a short reset to the beginning of the puzzle. Every puzzle only takes a handful of seconds to complete once you actually know the solution, so being able to test stuff out is made really easy. Another thing the game does is it gives you certain hints of what your sequence should be through just basic design. For example, you can maybe make 2 full ladders in a puzzle, but one of them leads to a laser that can only be shut off from a side that you can't reach from just coming down the ladder immediately. So you know you gotta go to the other ladder first. As long as you think logically, things start falling into a chronological order because the game also limits itself in terms of how much it needs you to do at once. If you see a locked door in a puzzle, almost every single time there will only be one locked door and one key, or one box and one platform that's too high up. There are always multiple things that you can anchor yourself in and say, okay, I know that this thing has to come before this thing. And by either the pinball effect that that revelation has, or through finding multiple similar anchors, or just by trial and error, you always wind up at the answer at a time where it feels satisfying but not frustrating. And I think that balance is very important for any kind of puzzle game. I'm assuming you've all had a stack of pancakes, right? Maybe you hate pancakes, I don't know, but I'm just gonna guess that most people have either had a stack of pancakes or they're at least able to understand the point I'm about to make about a stack of pancakes. The whole point is that one pancake has to be limited to a certain size. It has to be smaller than the plate. And then you can stack as many pancakes as you want on top of that if you want more pancake. It goes out to a certain point and then it goes up. The Pedestrian only ever asks you to shuffle around at most 6 to 7 sheets of paper in order to solve its puzzles. It never gets more complicated than that in terms of how many of these sheets you actually have to put together. And it introduces puzzles of that size within, I want to say, the first 10% of the game. Very early on, you're given puzzles that, again, in terms of the core idea of connecting doors and ladders on these sheets together, are as complicated as they're ever going to end up being. After that point, the way that the game ramps up its difficulty to match your growing skill is by adding new interactables that you need to use in the puzzles, making you incorporate more strategic backtracking, adding electric connections to the sheet so that you have to actually think about how to connect certain wire connections together while also going through the maze, or a whole bunch of other new mechanics like this green smoke that basically sets certain sheets in place, and that allows you to move the connections without these sheets being reset. So it adds another layer that you need to use to your advantage to solve the puzzle. And the key to all this is in that wording. Adds another layer. The actual main mechanics and puzzles are quickly expanded outwards, after which you have to add layers to that basic formula to extend it upwards, which loops back around to the pancake thing I was talking about. The Pedestrian also knows when to end in order to stop the stack getting too tall and feeling overwhelming at a certain point, meaning the whole way through everything still feels manageable. The point where the Witness took a turn for me is when I realized that truly everything in that game was a puzzle. Like, the ground you were walking on was a puzzle, and that's objectively amazing and cool, and The Witness is hands down one of the best puzzle games ever made in my opinion, but I also think that that's the kind of thing that made me eventually quit the game before beating it, and why a lot of other people out there have had a similar experience of just never finishing it. It started to just overwhelm me with this idea that everything here was a puzzle that needed to be solved, and as much fun as it was to figure some of this stuff out, it felt frustrating not getting something and then needing to move on to something else and not knowing if the puzzle was even solvable at the point that I was at, or maybe there was some kind of missing piece that I'd find 3 hours from now. It got to the point where I never wanted to boot it up because I just get stressed out since there's nothing to really ground you in that game. Listen, I'm a big dum-dum, I really am, but I do think that eventually I would have been able to beat The Witness without looking at any guides if I kept at it. But in the process, I'd absolutely lose my mind and I'd wonder if it'd be worth it.
Eddie! What is going on in there? Why? What is taking so long? I wasted all day caring for you. The Soul Train Awards were tonight. You promised
That's the second community reference in this video, where we're doing community reference bingo. I guess you could make a parallel to this with the Souls games in the action-adventure genre. I think those games are really rewarding and fun as hell, but some people just don't want to go through a crap ton of frustration before they get to enjoy themselves, and that's fair. The Witness is a great puzzle game, but it's great for people who embrace the buttload of pain it provides. Unlike our stack of pancakes in the Pedestrian, the Witness expands outwards and keeps expanding outwards until it overflows, and you gotta use your whole body to stop it from hitting the floor, and do all that while also eating the damn thing. Even if it ends up being the same amount of food as the stack, it feels uncontrollable and like a daunting task, whereas the balance in the Pedestrian makes it feel a lot more welcoming. Again, I want to reiterate that I don't think either one is objectively better than the other. I just prefer the Pedestrian because I felt like I could actually handle what it was giving me. And if your conclusion from all this is that I'm just too stupid to play The Witness, yeah, you're probably right. Look, I think the Pedestrian is a perfect example of how to execute a simple concept to an incredibly high degree of quality. And I also think that it might be the best puzzle game I've played in terms of its ability to be fun and challenging to people who are interested in puzzles, while also being a game that people who are less inclined to that sort of thing can play and still beat. If you're looking for a good introduction to puzzle games, I really don't think you could go wrong with this one. It might take you longer than it took me, but I know my brother's getting through it at a pretty steady pace, and he's notorious in our house for being I think the official term is a certified puzzle idiot, so hopefully you'll be fine. I hope this video helped convince you to buy this game and support the devs. My goal with this Indie Spotlight series is to draw as much attention as I can to smaller games that I enjoy, so even if I convinced one of you to go buy this, let me know about it in the comments. That'd be really awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new here and you liked the video and you're interested in not just other indie games, but just games in general. I do discussion and analysis on a whole bunch of games and gaming topics, so check it out, leave a like, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.